Hello and welcome to another Wannabe Entrepreneur episode. Today I have an interview. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but this one is very special because I have with me Simon Oiber, the founder of Feedhive, that I have already interviewed here in this podcast, and as well Yosef, who is an indie hacker, is also a member of the WB community, our community for indie makers, and he is the founder of Tiny Kiwi. Now, today's episode is very special because in the end of 2022, Simon acquired Yosef's company, Tiny Kiwi. And today we have both parties discussing the whole process. Why did Yosef decided to sell? Why did Simon thought it was a good idea to acquire? And they will be describing the whole process from their own perspective. It's a great opportunity for you to learn what you need to be aware when selling or acquiring a company, and as well to understand better what's going on in our lovely indie community. So, without any further ado, let's get started. Welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time, both of you.
Thank
Really
you.
nice. I think it's the first
Thank
time
you.
I'm actually meeting Yossi face to face. Could it be?
Yeah, I think so.
You look very similar to the photo, so yeah, that's for sure you.
yeah, yeah,
Yossi, just to give a little bit of context, is a member of the WB community, and I kind of followed you building Tiny Kiwi. I'm not sure if it was from the start, but I remember like early on, when you're
yeah,
showing Tiny Kiwi to the members of the community, and you were also sharing some codes, some discounts for people to try it out. And I remember, I think it was even before Schnapper. Am I saying this correctly? Schnapper from Tonydin.
yeah, yeah. It was before.
Yeah. So it was something completely new, and I thought, wow, this is cool. This is really interesting. And it's so cool also to see how, because now the community is, I guess, like 1 year and a half old, or even more. I don't know. And it's so cool to see how the members evolve. Some members kind of stay the same, but other members, they really had a huge jump in terms of revenue and what they've built, how they have grown. So it's great now to see that you were able to make such a great tool and then sell it, and now you're already working something else. So I think that that's also a very interesting aspect to explore, which is this market of also selling a company in the indie scene, right? We are used to hearing this on the startup scene and like the VC scene, but in the indie scene, this is
Yeah,
really cool. And I think more than ever, people are really, even the VCs, they are thinking, wow, we should invest in this because these people, they are profitable, or mostly profitable from the start, right?
yeah.
Yossi, tell me a little bit about yourself. And it's because I've already interviewed Simon here, and we had a full introduction about him and about his products and indie journey and everything. So he's already the second time that he's here in the podcast. But for you, Yossi, it's the first time, and I would love to hear a little bit more about yourself. I know that you're a developer as well, and yeah, just tell us who is Yossi.
So Yossi is 38 years old. Uh, Here's a number.
Okay, brave, saying the number right away.
yeah. Father to two small children, married, and I've been building software for the first part of the last 15 years, I think. Like I started
Mm-hmm.
way back, and I was always passionate about side projects and building stuff on my own. And throughout my career, I helped build a lot of products for other people, and I also do that now. Like I have a full-time job, which I really love, but there was always this entrepreneurship itch that never let me go. And I used to think that in order to scratch that itch, I need to like quit my job and go full time and raise money from VCs and all this
Mm-hmm.
stuff, like all this mainstream entrepreneurship stuff. And when I stumbled across the building public community on Twitter, like a year and a half ago, it was my mind has blown and was like, oh, these are people that I feel much more related to
Yeah.
than like people who go and raise millions from VCs before they have like basically wrote the first line of code.
Yeah.
And I felt that if they can do that, why can't I do that? Like I'm spending my evenings and early mornings building anyway. So why not treat the things that I build as like actual products? And it was a huge moment, like it was a huge mind shift for me, and I'm glad it happened. And since then, I started working on products that I want them to see the light of day. I want user to actually use them, and here I am.
What you just described, I think everyone goes through the same. At least I've spoken with a lot of people, and they always say, "Yeah, I do this as on the side and for fun." But I never knew, because we always thought, because we grew up seeing Zuckerbergs and Elon Musk's and all of this tech scene, and thinking, okay,
Exactly.
if you want to build a company, you need to raise money, you need to hire a team, you need to do all of that, and we always thought that that was the only way. Funny enough, we forgot that. I remember, for instance, my grandpa, he had a business which is kind of a lifestyle business, but there was no internet, so it was selling like a kiosk kind of business where you
Yeah.
basically
Oh,
sell
yeah.
all kind of stuff. And that's a lifestyle business. A lot of people had it, but for some reason there was this shift when people say like, no, if you want to start a business now, don't ask for money to a bank. You need to like raise millions, and that's the only way, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but funny enough, that's actually not true. We especially if you're a developer, you can build something fairly cheap. Uh, and I remember once I was having an doing a talk about indie hacking, about the whole concept about our community, and a few people came to me after the talk and they said, "Wow, I am an indie hacker and I didn't know it." One question that immediately came to my mind, and I don't know if it's the same for Simon, because Simon is a recent father as well.
Yep.
And
Congratulations.
Thank you.
yeah, congratulations. And Yossi, you said you're a father of two, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
How old are they?
So the little one is 3, and my biggest is 6. I actually kicked them out of the house now, but if they come back and you hear like things are breaking in the background and stuff, don't worry about it. It's fine.
I don't know, Simon, if you have the same question as me, but you have been 6 years. You have been an indie father. Plus, you have a full time job.
That's correct.
Plus, you are building your projects. How do you
Yeah.
get the time for all of this?
So I don't have a lot of hobbies.
Okay.
That's the truth. Like my hobby is coding and building stuff and working on products. So it really fits into my like some people finish their day job and they're, I don't know, playing on their PlayStation or watching Netflix, and I like to
Yeah.
build stuff. So it comes really natural for me to just close one laptop and open another one and just building stuff, because when you're building things for yourself, it's like no matter how much you love your day job, it's completely different. Like I'm obsessed with the autonomy, and I
Mm-hmm.
have 100% control on every decision, product decision, design decisions, code architecture,
Yeah.
and it's really like it doesn't feel like a job. It's
Yeah.
weird to say it, but I'm really enjoying the process, and always really felt really connected to the business. Like some developers, and it's fine, are really into the
Mm-hmm.
code. Like just let me write the code. I don't care about the business, the product, and
Right.
I never approached my job as a developer like that. Like I was always this annoying developer who asks the annoying questions on the product kickoff meeting, and have opinion about everything. Uh,
It's just awesome to hear that. I think all good indie founder stories just starts like this. Like everyone I know, at least, you hear sometimes these stories about people saying like, I was about to get fired from my job. I had excessive debt in the bank, and if I didn't succeed with this, I just kind of had to succeed. And they're mostly always the most toxic starts of good founder stories. And this is the real thing.
Yeah.
This is what I hear from mostly everyone. Like, have a nice stable job, go home, but instead of watching Netflix or PlayStation, you just sit and build because you just can't help it. And I really like it.
I like it, and I have it so much because when I was working and doing this at the same time, I couldn't hack it. I couldn't do it, and I'm not even a father, so I don't know. It's when you spend 8 hours a day in your laptop, and then you go home and you spend another eight. It's I know it's not easy, but the fact that you are able to do it is incredible.
I think a lot of people treat it like as I have my day job and I give everything to my day job, and that's always the right thing to do because usually the day job pays the bills. But the thing about like being an indie founder and working on your own thing that you set the rules. Like no one said that okay, I now need to go and sit for 8 or 6 hours. Maybe I can move a little bit slower and sit for an hour, maybe 2 hours. Maybe you can
Yeah,
skip a day. Sometimes I skip days. Like if a specific day, like I come exhausted and I had like a rough day at work. So no, I won't make myself unless I have like a super
right.
huge bug or something like that. Like you set your own rules.
You don't have the same pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can turn the dial up and down as it fits your life because
Hmm.
life always
True.
gets in the way.
100%.
One thing that is interesting, you said that this is your hobby, right? So now, Simon, I'm curious. You're doing this full time, right?
Yeah.
What is your hobby then? Like, is your hobby still indie hacking, or do you
Yep.
get to have
Well,
other hobbies?
yeah, it's interesting, but because yes, it is. I went full time at Feedhive 2 years ago now, and at the time I went full time, I was very, very. I knew from the start that this was not going to be. I'm not the all in kind of person that this is not going to be. I won't allow it to kind of like just swallow me whole and become that
Right.
that kind of obsessed founder. So started Feedhive. I made that into my full time job and quit my full time job. But as soon as Feedhive became my full time job, I needed new side projects because it's the same, right? Like, so I spent 8 hours working on Feedhive, and then I go on to Link Drip or my YouTube channel, and now TinyKiwi because it that those become the new side projects. And at some point, I see it more now as if like I don't consider myself working on multiple products per se. I'm working on an ecosystem. Now the whole thing plays together. And I really feel
Right.
like when I put my effort into something, anything that is in my either my product portfolio or the channels that I'm building, I'm working on the whole thing. That's how it feels at this point. So the whole thing is now a mix of side projects, full-time job, and just like Yossi pointed out, I also don't have anywhere to be or someone to deliver something to at a specific time. So I get up every morning and I kind of pick and choose what a little bit of mix of like what do I need to focus on to push things forward, and what do I
Right.
want to spend my time on today? What do I feel like doing?
Hmm. But you know what scares me about all that is the fact that our hobby is our job, and that puts us very vulnerable to be addicted. I feel because when when you are doing something that you truly love, that you really enjoy doing, which is working in our indie projects, but at the same time you think it's something that you need to do as well because it's what's bringing you money. It's a good justification to just work all the time because you both love it and you need to do it, so you can justify to others that you need to work, and then you can justify to yourself because you say I love it. How do you manage this? How do you manage not turning into a work addict?
I gotta be completely honest. It is concerns that I have had myself. It's I have the same way. I can't. I don't remember when I watched a Netflix movie the last time. Literally never do that ever. I'm up when I'm like I would say 95% of my time awake I spent one way or another on doing all of this. And that's not that I feel that I work all the time. It's just I'm naturally drawn to it. I simply can't help it. I couldn't imagine
Yeah.
anything better to spend my time on. Now I just had a kid, so of course I've like a lot of time now naturally goes to that. It's something that I don't have to kind of I don't feel like I don't have to like argue with myself whether I should now spend time on being with my kid rather than working. It comes pretty naturally. But when I do have free time, I just can't sit and do nothing. I will naturally end up back working here.
Yeah.
It I don't feel in any way that I'm addicted to it, but I am sometimes aware that me talking about this and framing it from my angle and how I roll um, might sometimes give the wrong impression on social media.
Does it ever happen to you to take a break, like an extended holiday? When I say extended, it's maybe more than a week. Let's say like 2 weeks, and returning after those holidays and thinking and not having the same urge to go work on your project.
I haven't tried it in the 2 years since I quit my full time job to now be doing this and doing on my own. I haven't had
Really, you
a
didn't take
week
any
plus where I didn't
vacations?
work on my things. No, I actually didn't. It was easy when I was consulting because it wasn't inherently that was I did that for money. It wasn't that I
Yeah,
was just like dying excited about my clients' projects. I did that for money. But the last 2 years while I've been doing this, I haven't had plus week where I didn't touch it at all. No, so I
yeah.
couldn't say.
That's when I kind of realized that maybe this is kind of an addiction, because when I return after like 2 weeks of holiday or something, the urge I feel now to go wake up and the first thing that I want to do is go and work on my projects. This urge kind of disappears. It's I
Hmm.
still like it, but I don't have the same urge, and it takes me like 2 weeks to get to the same level of I want to work, I want to do it. So then I kind of realized that yeah, maybe this is what work addiction kind of
Hmm.
is. Like you love it, doing it so much that you just don't notice. You just, yeah, I do it because I love it. Um, no, I just find it something interesting and something to
True.
to be aware of. So to continue things here in our storyline, at first I thought on asking Yossi to describe uh, what Tiny Kiwi is, but I think it's more interesting to ask you, Simon, what is describe what is Tiny Kiwi?
Well, TinyKiwi is an image editing tool that is used for people that want to make really good looking designs really fast. You can think of it as Canva, but an even more minimalistic and easy to use version. I think a lot of people think about Canva as a lightweight Photoshop, where Photoshop is
Yeah,
extremely complex. We think of TinyKiwi as a lightweight Canva. So even a step further down the simplicity line, and still being able to achieve still being able to make some really beautiful looking and really astonishing looking visuals that you can post on social media.
interesting. And now Yossi, can you describe Tiny Kiwi and what did you idealize when you first built it?
So first of all, someone explained it very well. So I don't think I can top that. And also, I was sitting here smiling proudly. But, but Tiny Kiwi, I think a simplified version of Canva. It's a great way like it's a great one liner for Tiny Kiwi. And also, when I originally built it, I imagined something that will really suit my needs as an indie developer who want to build in public and shares like beautiful screenshots of what I'm working on. And I started building Tiny Kiwi as an internal tool for myself because I felt
Hmm.
at that time there wasn't any good options, or I felt like that, to add like text and arrows and play around with the images. Most of the tools at that time were like, okay, just grab some predefined background and put it behind your screenshot. And I felt like I want more control. Yeah, it's a way to share beautiful images with your audience in a captivating way. And the emphasis is to do it as quickly as possible, but allowing you to play around with your style, with your branding. That's Tiny Kiwi. That's how I see Tiny Kiwi.
That's interesting because even though you do describe the tool in a similar manner, my first impression with Tiny Kiwi is a tool to share screenshots in social media. That's what I thought it was. I never thought like it could be a lightweight Canva, for instance. And it's interesting already because I see that Yossi is already maybe thinking, okay, the reason why I built it was so that I could share it. So it has this intention. And for Simon, you focus more on no, I want this to be a lightweight Canva.
What happens is, as I worked on Tiny Kiwi, I realized it can be much more than just a screenshot tool.
When did the thought of possibly selling it started like popping up in your head, and why?
The process from me realizing I need to sell Tiny Kiwi to the moment that I actually started the process of selling it was, I think it was really minutes. It was one bus ride from my way back home from work. I felt really, really bad that I don't have time to work on Tiny Kiwi as I used to, because I started a new project that I was really passionate about. And also I had a rough day at work. And the thought of going back and working on Tiny Kiwi features was really too much. And I stared out of the window. It's really cinematic, but this is how it was. I stared out of the window and I said, it's unfair for your paying users that you don't put as much as attention you used to Tiny Kiwi, and it's time to let it go and to pass it on to someone who could take it to a whole new level. Like I felt in a position that all my projects and my side job were too much, and I remember I began thinking about it, and then I remembered that me and Simon has a chat a few months earlier about integrating Tiny Kiwi into Feedhive. So I just DM'd him, and I think and Simon has this auto reply, which is super understandable. Like, I will get back to you as soon as I can. I'm getting a lot of DMs. And I was like, sent the DM and continue staring out of the window. And I think like after 10 minutes, like I got a DM back and I was like, oh, this is happening. And 2 weeks later, we announced the sale.
It's really a movie like situation. What I'm thinking is there's so many thoughts just crossed to my head. The first one is how a lot of great ideas come in resting and passive situations, and that's something that I also been learning. While like as I'm working a lot, and we tend to do this a lot, like work, and we try not to rest or not to have any passive times. We're always on our phones, right? Even when we go to the toilet, that's something interesting. We don't we can only really rest when we take a shower or something, because if you're in the toilet you're like, okay, let me just check. So we're always bombarding our brain with ideas, and sometimes when we have time to reflect is when we're commuting or and doing these interesting things. And it's interesting that this idea, yeah, came to you in that situation. Did you ever sell any company before? Because like, for me, I don't even put this as a possibility, right? So I don't even know. So why did you ever sell? Did you hear anything about selling? Why do you think this idea came to your mind while you were in the bus?
So I never sold anything, basically. Like literally,
Okay.
I didn't even had a lemonade stand or something like that. I never sold anything. I was always earning money from day jobs. So the whole experience was super, super new to me. And because I realized that I can no longer work on Tiny Kiwi as I used to and as I want to, it was like very obvious to me that someone might benefit from it. Like, I put a lot of love into this product, and like shutting it down, like it didn't
Okay.
even cross my mind or something like that. So the next thing is like, okay, I'll just pass it on to someone who can
Right.
give it the love that I used to give it. And it's weird. I'm talking about a product in ways of love, but it really is like it's a complicated relationship with our products, right? It's like it's complicated. Like it's a love hate, like the
I totally get it.
whole
Yeah.
rainbow of emotions.
At this point, TinyKiwi had customers, like paying customers, right? And I think
Right.
that also makes a huge difference because you always feel, even if you only have one paying customer, that changes the dynamic so much because suddenly you are attached to the product. Suddenly if you just decided to close it or not to put your love into it, someone else is being affected, right? So that's something that really affects me as well with my projects.
Exactly. Like the moment someone is paying their hard-earned money to your product, it's a moment that changes everything. It's literally changes everything.
It's so weird because it works in the opposite as well. Because I have it exactly the same way as you have. Anything with Feedhive, decisions can be hard. We have a lot of users now, so whenever we roll something new or try something new, it's with a lot of care. And it's not that when we took over TinyKiwi, it's not that I was in any way careless about it, but it's not the same when you adopt a product that you didn't build. One of the first things we did with TinyKiwi was it's to place an ad. When you go now in TinyKiwi, you click export the image, a Feedhive ad just comes up. That was the first thing. If this was on Feedhive, normally I would be a bit more back and forth. Can we do this? Is this pushing too hard? Is this too aggressive? Here, placing that ad on TinyKiwi was just like a 5 minute decision. Yeah, of course we should have an ad. And that's again, like I definitely care about
Interesting.
the users that we took over from TinyKiwi, and I care a lot about the people that are now using it through an integration with Feedhive. But it's not the same level of you don't have the same attachment to it in the same way. And I actually find it healthy. It you can somehow back down and take a little bit more objective, reasonable decisions when it's not your child in a weird sense.
That's very interesting. I've never thought about that. That the attachment you have to a product you build is not the same as the attachment you have to a product you buy, and that can actually be good for the product.
I would say so.
Let's go back then. Go back to those few months before, when you had that first conversation, Simon, with Yossi about integrating TinyKiwi with Feedhive. What was going through your mind back then? Why did you wanted to do this?
Well, to back up even further, when we started talking about acquiring TinyKiwi a few months later, for me, I didn't need a bus ride or any kind of clarity to make a decision on this, because this is actually more than a year of pain that has accumulated over time. Because way back in mid 2021, roughly, Feedhive was growing. We were getting more users. We started looking into a Canva integration. That was the next kind of thing to make sure that we have an image editor for our users to use. But weirdly, Canva had closed their application, so you can't now add that classical Canva button and have Canva pop up inside your app anymore. They completely limited this. Or
Okay.
they still had the Chinese version open. And we added that because they had the normal version open. And even though it's still the same as just in Chinese, our users, they got confused about it. And a lot of them had concerns about data privacy and a lot of all. And it was just not possible. And we emailed Canva many times asking, when are you going to open this again? And we just got this kind of like generic answer every time. And we, in middle 2021, we started looking for other tools, and we found this other tool called Crello. It's now called Vista Create today, but it's actually an alternative to Canva, and it's a very decent one. And I Crello was actually on AppSumo not that long before, selling as a lifetime deal. So I thought, like, okay, this can't be Canva level big organization yet, since they're on AppSumo. So I started reaching out to a few of the founders in my network and heard them about this integration, and they all had a great experience with integrating with Crello. So I thought, like, perfect. If we can't get Canva, we can at least get Crello. So I reached out to the Crello team, and again, I was just a little bit too late, because the Crello had just been acquired by Vistaprint and is now called Vista Create. And the terms that I was presented to was vastly different than the ones that I had heard my fellow founders talk about when they were integrating with Crello. It was pricey. it was a lot of money we had to pay every month to integrate with this tool, and the terms was stiff. But yet we went on with it, and we spent a month, almost 2 months, to kind of preparing this integration with Vista Create. And suddenly, at the very last moment, the guy I was talking to and the marketing guy that was running this whole thing, he suddenly said, "Oh, by the way, this monthly price that we have offered you, that's of course if you pay the whole thing yearly. So not only did we have to pay a lot of a high monthly price, but you also have to pay times 12." And then I
Whoa.
said that was not what we discussed. Like, we had a monthly and then a 30-day cancellation period. What is it then if I have to pay monthly? Oh, it's, and then he added 20% on top of it, just in the last moment. And it wasn't that much the money. It was the way this was done. I was like, I just don't feel like doing business with these
Yeah.
guys. This just feels not nice at all. So I completely closed down that whole discussion. The guy from Vista Create was pissed off. He was really mad at us, and they spent a lot of time, blah blah blah, but not in this way. And we had a lot of, like, meanwhile we were doing Brandbird, which is another tool from Jim Raptis, which is another indie founder. And actually, in the beginning, when we integrated Brandbird, our users were really, really excited about it. They really loved the tool. But we found out that the new users that were coming on board, and this was happening while Feedhive was up marketing, so we were targeting more and more businesses and agencies, and a bit more like more well-established businesses and less indie creators. And these
Right.
people, they don't know anything about Jim Raptis or me or the whole Twitter indie community. They just came into Feedhive, which in itself is not the cheapest social media marketing tool on the market. And then they had this experience of like opening Brandbird, and now they had to pay again because you need to upgrade to a Brandbird plan in order to remove the watermark and add a few other things to unlock it to
Right.
its full capabilities. And we had a lot of users who were quite annoyed with this, and we actually tried A/B testing it, and we found out that it having it there and then having to pay for it created a worse experience than not having Brandbird there at all. And this made us, of course, we reached out to Jim Raptis, the founder, and see if we could kind of make a deal with him in some way where this could be unlimited for our users through a monthly payment of sort. But Jim, I completely understand it from his perspective. This was just not a very lucrative deal for him. It was not good business. It was not very attractive. We have a lot of users on Feedhive, ton of server cost on his behalf on something that doesn't scale proportionally with our user base. It was just not a good deal for him. So we couldn't land something that really worked. So we started kind of packing Brandbird away, and for a long time it was in this very like corner of Feedhive. You had to click a bunch of times to even find it. And this was where I went to, we have a Facebook group for the Feedhive users, and I went in there and said like, explained them the whole thing. We can't get Canva. They won't open. We found out that Canva, meanwhile, they were rolling their own social media management tool. So this is why they still don't have it open today. They have it entirely closed now. So we had to kind of tell our community that we can't get Canva. This is just what it is. We failed to get Vista Create and Trello. Now we need to kind of kill off Brandbird, and we're out. Like, what do you think? Then users in this group started suggesting a bunch of tools we could do, and then I saw one that popped up again and again. TinyKiwi. They said, like, Simon, you should check out TinyKiwi. There's this new tool on the market. It's called TinyKiwi. Yeah, it was on Product Hunt the other day, like first product of the day. It looks really like something. And I was like, really? So search on Twitter, and I saw like, okay, I realized, okay, Yossi, this guy's following me. Oh, cool. So there might be some kind of like, let's see where this can go. So I reached out to Yossi, and I was just like, let's really hope that we can get something where we can agree on some kind of unlimited edition so our users can finally get this tool. And in the first round, Yossi had to get back because of time and needed to kind of consider it. And I was like, damn. And then a few months later, coming back again saying like, here's the thing, I'm actually considering selling it. And I was like, I'm in, let's do it.
Do you remember when you got that DM on Twitter? Do you remember where you were and how you felt?
I was in my in my office here working, and first I was just like, I was excited and I was like relieved, and I was like, please let this be something. So of course I started asking like, okay, what's the current MRR, and what would the price be roughly, and what's the tech stack? Is this going to work with the ecosystem we're using now? Oh, we're using Superbase, we're using Next.js and React, and I was like, check. Yeah, good. And I got increasingly more and more excited, and it was a very easy decision for me to make. I didn't need any clarity or bus ride to kind of make this one. I was very eager to finally get an image creation tool into Feedhive.
Yossi, did you have any idea of this, that you were actually solving a huge problem for Feedhive without knowing?
The reason I reached out to Simon to begin with was because I knew that Feedhive is integrating into all these different tools. So from a business perspective, it sounds like that could be something that will be interesting for Feedhive. Like I assume they are paying like for all these tools and stuff like this. So why not acquire one? Like there's a million reasons not to acquire one, but I felt like it might be a good lead, and Simon was the first person that I reached out to, and also the decision to reach out to Simon was it's funny because you're following someone for a while and you're watching their YouTube videos, and in a way like you kind of feel like you know them. They're not like someone like that you have absolutely no idea who's you doing business with. And I was really excited when Simon reached out back, because I said, like, if I'm going to do this, and it was really scary for me, like, as you know, I don't have like a corporate behind me or a company at all. It's just me, and I felt like if I'm doing this process, which I'm doing for the first time, and I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing regarding the process and stuff like this, I want to do it with someone who I feel like I can trust. Like there's this base level of trust. And when I started chatting with Simon, it became even clearer that, like, okay, this is someone I can trust. This is someone I want to do business with, and I want to take this huge leap for me with this person, and not like someone that I have no idea who he is or what his motivations. So yeah, it was like a combination of me knowing that Feedhive might be actually interesting in acquiring something like that, and also me following the journey of someone, and like felt that I have this, like I know this kind of know this person, like good vibes, smiling, indie creator, respected member of the indie community on Twitter, like
That's true. And I totally see that. So it's someone that you can trust. But at the same time, I can see how it can also be scary, right? Because what if it goes wrong? What if it does not like? I don't know how confident you were with your tech stack. To be honest, some of my code I'm embarrassed to show to anyone. Like some of the code I've made just make this feature work. Like if Simon would come like, hey, I wanna buy it, I'm like, no, don't see it. And especially looking at Simon and seeing, okay, yes, 100K followers. What if he like trash talks me? And like, what if he comes and says like, yeah, this Thiago has the shittiest code ever. Don't buy it. Was this a concern from you, or like did you know? No, I have something really well built, something that like everyone would be proud to own.
So, so I don't think ever in my 15 years of career that I felt like, okay, this is something I was built good. Like there's always this feeling that, oh my god, I can't believe this is actually working. Like what have I done? but when I built TinyKiwi, like I basically knew what I'm doing. I went through a lot of parts like really quickly and dirty to get out to the market or publish a new feature and stuff like this. And Simon asked me, one of the first questions was like, what can I expect? And I said, like, well, like it's a decent code base, but don't expect to see any test, and you'll see some duplication here and there. And I think like you wouldn't expect anything else from like an indie maker sitting at home like at night coding. But so if I would like, if one of my team members will will try to publish this code, I will probably like hell no, this is not going into production, but it's working, and it was battle tested. And TinyKiwi at the end of the day had like hundreds of photos generated every month. Part of the due diligence process was sharing parts of the code,
Right.
and uh, and like let's talk about it. Like, if I wasn't doing it with Simon, I think this is one of the moments that will make me like back up really quickly, because I wasn't expecting it, and it totally makes sense when you think about it. But as someone who is doing this process for the first time, like, wait, I'm showing you the code. Basically, it's the code. It's like the heart of everything. But because it was Simon, because we had this back and forth, and I felt like I can trust him, it was not any issue for me. But if it was someone else, I don't know. There was a moment of like, oh, I need to send the code. Right, it makes sense. But
Right.
what if?
Did you agree on a price before that, or this is all before?
So I think it was like a ballpark pricing, like at the beginning, before, like, to make sure like we're on the same page, like
Okay.
and all the like, let's see the code and let's talk about tech stack and stuff like that came after like this. We had like a baseline that now we can talk.
I asked Yossi to share some of the code in GitHub gists without sharing or giving me access to the entire code base before
Okay.
we kind of went on. But the price was like partially, it was a multiple of the revenue that the product had at the time, and it was a little bit of like the strategic advantage that we would get from taking over the tool, even though these kind of things are a little bit hard to quantify. But it wasn't really, the price wasn't really hung up on the quality of the code. And I also, my team and I, we talked about this before we kind of moved on, and I shared some of these gists with one of my developers, and we were like, we saw this as a little bit like a house that we would take over and needed to renovate a little bit before we could fully
Right.
integrate it in the rest of our ecosystem. And I talked to one of the developers on my team, being like, how is this? And decent. There's a few walls that needs to have a little bit of painting here and there, but not anything that was in any way a deal breaker at the time. And then we went through letter of intent. Then I got access to more of the code and more of the assets and everything, and then we took it from there. We actually we ballparked the price in the very first 10 minutes of our discussion, and we stuck to that price. We never I didn't see any reason to try to discount based on anything I saw in the code base, and it was just pretty straightforward from there.
What are you expecting in terms of quality? And what kind of quality would be a big no for you, Simon?
I think I was already pretty aware of the quality because the app was fully open. You don't even have to create an account to use it almost to its full capacity. And right now, the things that are hidden behind the paywall is actually like 10% of what the app can do. Most of it is completely open and free. So I was not afraid about the quality because the app was very functional and very fast, and the whole thing was working really well. Something that would have been a deal breaker was the tech stack. If this was a Angular app hosted on Google Cloud or something that's completely foreign to our what I and my team does tech wise, that would have been a deal breaker. If the code was completely unmanageable and somehow it was working nicely when you operated it, and somehow not. But I think as a software engineer, when we've done this a lot of time, we also realize that it's just not how it works. Things that work really smoothly and really well when there's a lot of moving elements, which there isn't TinyKiwi. It's not that of a simple tool. When you kind of start digging in all of the things you can do, that wouldn't have worked that well if it wasn't at least somewhat decent engineered to begin with. So I wasn't
Right.
worried.
What is more important for you, Simon, as a buyer? Is it to have a code that is, follows all the good design patterns, everything structured with the right framework and everything, or a code that might be a little bit spaghetti, but it's easy to follow. It might have some duplication, but it's easy to read, easy to follow, and easy for you or one of your developers to just go there and tweak a few things. What would you prefer?
The latter, 100%. And
Okay.
and even our own apps are like that. I think that there are different schools of software. There is some software that needs to be structured and run in a certain way, and then there are these kind of SaaS type software that is it's a living organism. It changes constantly, trying to make things uh, best practice engineering as you're taught in the university just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for TinyKiwi. It doesn't make sense for Feedhive. We have a ton of code duplication, a ton of things copied over here and there, and a ton of comments saying this is temporary, like in that date, delete this because the campaign is over, or whatever. So like it fit in well. I think I would be turned off if it was a thing with so many layers of abstraction that I couldn't follow it myself, and that just getting a grasp of how to even do anything
Yeah.
with the tool would take weeks to just dig into. So I was very happy to see it in the state that it was. It reminded of our own products, hands down.
Yeah. Hear that, all the Symfony users? uh, interesting. Okay. What was what was your tech stack, Yossi?
And Next.js with React, at the time JavaScript, database and authentication, Supabase. I highly recommend it. Plausible for analytics, and I think that's about it.
How was it deployed?
So DigitalOcean, a platform, it's really nice. Used it for many projects. Basically, get a CI/CD almost out of the box. It's connected to your GitHub repository. Once you push to a certain branch, you publish the new version.
Simon, does this matter? Where is it deployed? If it's DigitalOcean, if it's Google, if it's AWS, for you, does it matter?
It matters a little bit. I was happy that it wasn't Google. I'm not a fan of Google Cloud's ecosystem.
Why?
At all. I think this is a thing that becomes quite religious really fast. I like Amazon. I've always been building on Amazon. I can navigate my way around in Amazon and know exactly how it's working. I dislike Google Cloud Platform for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of UI clicking that I dislike. It's harder to do infrastructure as code. I can use something like Pulumi to set up an entire Amazon stack without touching their UI at all. They don't really have good support for GraphQL. I dislike Firebase. I don't really enjoy working in it at all. I really liked Superbase. I think it's a fresh alternative to something Firebase alike. But again, then there are Google engineers sitting and saying, like, what I could say the same about everything you just said, but just with Amazon. It's like shit UI, horrible to work with. It's so clunky and old, and then the whole cloud thing becomes a little bit religious. I think the important part here is that you adopt something that you and your team is already experienced with using. All our other products are Amazon and based on Next.js, and actually TypeScript. With TinyKiwi wasn't based on TypeScript, and it's the first thing we've done. I have a developer now converting the whole thing to TypeScript, to kind of like. But I think it doesn't really matter whether it's one or the other. It matters that when you adopt something into an ecosystem of products that you're already running, you need to make sure that it fits and that you don't get dependent on 10 different vendors for 10 different things,
Right.
and documentation for 10 different things, and it's just easier when the whole thing is together. One day I might sell the entire thing, Feedhive, TinyKiwi, LinkDrip, all the products that I'm running, and then I can sell something that's like, I can tell these people, like, you just need to hire a team that know AWS and TypeScript, then they're pretty good to go. And I think that's important. If the whole thing had been Google, then the whole thing had been Google. I don't think it's necessarily that important.
Okay. But when you're acquiring a company, you want it to be as matchable as possible, or easy to migrate. Is that correct?
Preferably the first one. I think if this had been a Google Angular product, I had turned it down.
I was wondering, like, as an advice for all the indie hackers out there, my advice would be then, based on this, just go for something that everyone is using, like something generic, like React.
For sure,
right?
100%.
But then yeah, if you have Google or AWS, and if that's a deal breaker, I mean, as you said, AWS or Google, it's kind of a religion, or DigitalOcean or something. So what is the advice here for indie makers building stuff that might want one day to sell it, besides being going for the generic React and everything?
That is the advice. Like, go for something that now Yossi reached out here and it was like a good 50-50. Could have been either or, but it's not like if you're going to be building on something like Superbase and using React and using anything that like DigitalOcean is just on top of AWS. So that's like in the AWS kind of ecosystem. And it's not like if you pick one of these big ones, there is a substantial chance that you're going to find a match that uses these products. And if you're negotiating with an acquirer that are non-tech, then you can at least tell them which tech stack they need to hire a team for, or ask them which tech stack their team is already familiar with. So that would be the advice. Don't use Svelte or something like that. It's you're gonna make it difficult for you if your plan from the get-go is to sell it. If your plan is to play around and have fun, and then it suddenly kind of evolves into something, that's another talk. But if you have that in your mind from the beginning, that this might something be worth selling someday, consider that. Pick some of the big ones.
This is great. I've never thought about this, to be honest. This is something that I don't believe a lot of indie makers think. Okay, what technology should I build if I want to sell it? But I think more and more it makes sense to consider that. Was there any time when you thought, okay, this is not happening, like this sell is not happening, that this will be a deal breaker, something that didn't go as you were expecting? Is it something juicy coming from top of your head?
I think from my perspective, once we went through the due diligence part, which again I wasn't aware of, which is a thing, which totally makes sense and it should be a thing. But
What is
there
that?
was
What is that? The due diligence?
so for super obvious reasons, once you buy a company, like I shared with Simon small snippets of the code, but you want to see like what you're getting. And there's this moment in the sell process that like, okay, here is the access to the GitHub repository, and check it out. This is what you're going to buy. And I remember that this process was like, from my perspective, was like, I hope I hope he won't back down. I hope everything will be to his liking. I hope and also I was like, I didn't want to feel like I was leading in, like sharing like nice snippets, but then when he sees the actual code, like, oh, okay, so there's like 5% that is reading well, and that's what you shared with me, but everything behind it is like complete garbage. So when I shared the snippets, I actually like chose them based on like important and main parts of the application, and not like the most beautiful parts of the application, because
Right.
trust is like the base for everything in these kind of deals. But this is the moment that you actually like, here it is, here is what I'm working on, this is what you're going to buy. And
Were you feeling nervous?
yes, there were like a few days when I was like, like you can never know. And also everything happened like so fast that
Right.
there was moments when I stopped and said like, is this actually happening? I'm actually going to sell TinyKiwi. Is this thing happening right now? Like it was, Simon was super responsive, and the whole conversation went like so smoothly. And I think, me personally, I had fun in this 2 weeks process. Like it was a fun experience, and I had fun talking with Simon and working with him and figuring out like how to do this thing. And yeah, there was this moment that said, everything is going to explode in my face. Like this is too good to be true. Yeah, definitely.
What did your friends, wife said when you described it? They say, "Hey, this is happening." What did they say? Do you remember?
Yeah, actually do remember what my dear wife said. I took this pass home, and I got back home, and I said like, yeah, I might sell this tiny kiwi, and and I believe her exact reaction was like, really? Someone wants to buy it? And on the opposite, when I showed my wife the tiny kiwi ad Feedhive created, she said to me, "This is how it should be." I was like, seriously, I'm working on this. I haven't heard a single good thing from you this whole time, and this ad, and you're like, this is how it should be done.
Do you remember when you got the last message saying, yes, let's do the deal. It's done. The diligence are done. I'm going to, what's your bank account? Do you remember that?
So I think that the message it's more complicated than what's your bank account,
Right.
sadly.
Yeah.
But I remember there was like it's a process, and the process it's a complicated process with a lot of different steps, and each step has the potential to be a deal breaker. Like there's a lot of back and forth, and you move forward really like patiently and waiting for responses and stuff like that. So there's not this moment like, yeah, let's do this. There's like, okay, let's do this. Let's see code snippets. Like, okay, let's go through the code snippets. And I think the moment when the moment that we went past the diligent phase, and we start talking about like wiring money and stuff like that, this was the moment that I said like, okay, we went through this. This is actually happening. I managed not to screw things up. Amazing. that's the moment.
How did you celebrate?
So, so I think I celebrated. I don't remember doing anything super special. So this day when we finally announced on LinkedIn and Twitter, and I remember my Twitter notification going crazy. So I mostly celebrated by answering to people, and it was fun. Like it was fun. It was a fun day. It was a really exciting day.
What about your perspective, Simon, in this same situation? When did you realize that, okay, yes, we are going for it? Now, how did you feel? Because you are the one paying the money, so it might be a different feeling.
Well, to be fairly honest, in here from my perspective, things did look a little bit differently. We were starting talking about this acquisition in the end of December. I think it was around like the 18th of December or something like that. Our talk started, and we a few months back we sold almost $100,000 worth of pre-sales on a new tool that we launched, LinkDrip, and we were running very behind on this launch. We had a date where we were like, if we couldn't offer people early access to the tool, all of the people that have paid, we would offer them all a refund. And we were running very behind. So I was stressing over getting this tool ready. At the same time, I was doing two other things that I can't tell you in now, but I'm gonna have announcements about this year.
Okay.
And I had to manage all of this, and at the same time reaching out to my accountants and just kind of let them know I'm gonna buy this software, this Israeli startup. And they were like, you know what? If you can get the purchase done this year before January, we can do a huge write-off. You have extra money that you can save in taxes. So the whole thing was like, okay, so we need to kind of get kind of through all of this and have the payment and the bank transfer and everything done before New Year's, on top of managing these other things. So for me, this whole Tiny Kiwi thing was one out of like 5 kind of threats that I was kind of managing at the same time. So there was also, for sure, also for me, an element of trust, because I didn't have time to thoroughly look through the whole thing. I didn't have time. Right. Yossi was very nice at making these videos that introduced the whole code base. And I skimmed through them, and then I gave them to my developer, and I told him, can you give it an impression about this tool? And he was like, it looks decent, it looks good. And I just had to trust that. And I was under a bit of a pressure managing a bunch of different things here. But we got it closed before New Year's, and I got to do my write-off, and we took over the tools. We announced it in early January, but we ended up doing the whole thing in about 10 days or so.
Wow.
So it was very interesting, and yeah, so that was a
Is there
little
some
bit
kind
my
of
perspective.
guarantee? You know, when you buy a new house or something, you get this 5 years guarantee, or you buy some new laptop or something. Is there some kind of guarantee with the company? They're like, yeah, for the next 2 years, if something goes wrong, yes, you'll have to fix it, kind of thing.
I think we put 30 days, or was it 10 days or something in the contract, where it was like, if we found something that was like, we could do kind of a force majeure if there was something that was completely a deal breaker, something that was never mentioned during due diligence, or something completely out of the ordinary bad, that was not, that Yossi hadn't been transparent about upfront, then we could turn it back. I think it's a
Okay.
standard in these kind of like asset
Hmm.
purchase agreements. Um, but fortunately, that was not.
Yeah. That's so interesting to see the different aspects. So in one side, you have indie maker that has a full-time job and is doing things on the side and is able to sell a company and is super happy. And in the other side, you have a full-time indie hacker, which is super stressed because, okay, I am buying this, but I have so many other things going on. So it's really cool to see
And
the
actually,
different
adding to that,
perspectives.
I had a very very overdue pregnant wife, and I
Exactly.
knew I
Yeah.
was about to, like, okay, I'm gonna have a kid very soon. Now, actually, because just to kind of emphasize, that's normally not how I kind of live my life around my life. I'm not normally that busy. Everything just kind of accumulated just around this time, and
Right.
then
End of
in
the
the
year.
middle of everything, Yossi jumped in a DM there, like, I'm planning to sell Tiny Kiwi, and I was like, okay, we need to kind of get this in as well, and yeah, it comes in peaks like that.
Yeah, I remember someone DM'd me like, if like I'm disappearing for like a day or two, don't worry, I'm in the hospital. It's like, like he gave me a heads up, and I was like, oh, exciting, like amazing. But yeah, he managed to do a lot of stuff
Yeah.
simultaneously.
Incredible. What does this mean for our community, for the indie community? Now more we see, it seems that we see, I don't know if you heard, for instance, about Tweet Hunter. I had a really nice chat with Thibaut about the sale, which is he sold the company for many millions.
Yeah,
And
1.4
of course,
millions. It was incredible.
that's only the first, you hear in the podcast when I have time to edit, but that's the money in upfront. But then there's the whole deal that actually makes it much more than that, uh, which is really interesting. And now we are starting to see these kind of things, like indie companies being sold in a quite often. I don't want to say a daily basis, but for a lot of money. And then also indie makers and bootstrappers acquiring companies. And there's this whole market with micro acquire and side projects. I don't remember sidecars.io. I don't know. There's a lot of marketplaces as well, and I would love to see your perspective of and to close down this chat, but from each one of you, your perspective in this new era of indie making, with with people selling and buying companies, selling side projects and buying side projects. Um, so maybe Yossi, you can start speaking a little bit about this. So how do you see this market? Is something that you want to do more often? Is it something that you think, okay, now I'm building a new project with the possibility of selling it? How did this sell change your perspective in indie hacking?
So it definitely made a difference. Like when I'm now working on a new project, and like it will sound funny to you, but now I'm all the different accounts that I'm using are using the same email address, and I've created a separate, like a dedicated email address for everything, because
Ah,
one of the after the acquisition, you need like to transfer
exactly.
a lot
I
of
forgot to
accounts.
ask that. Yeah.
Yeah, you
How
need
did
to
that go?
transfer a lot of accounts, and we had this like on Notion, like a huge table of things that needs to be transferred, and I was like, I sign up with my Gmail to this one, and there was a whole bunch of stuff going on, so I created a single account to manage everything. Like,
That's
not
so
that I'm
smart.
thinking about selling the new project; it's not even like officially launched yet, but just in case, it's to make things easier. But I think, like, from a business perspective, uh, it's really makes sense. Like, you buy something from an indie maker or an indie company, like they almost certainly like at least somewhat profitable. They like don't have like these VCs that they need to pay back to, or like shareholders who pull the strings from behind. Like uh, it's like very pure. Like you buy a product that is very pure and
Very
really,
simple.
yeah. Like as a rule of thumb, I'm sure there's a lot of like business things that's going on like in
Right.
bigger companies, but you like taking a product that it's almost always at least somewhat profitable, uh, has made it on its own. Like think about it, like TinyKiwi, like um, it was made kind of popular without any huge marketing efforts from my end, like nothing like that. So it's really like when you think about like indie product, it's like a rough diamond. If it gets to the point that it's actually interesting to buy it, you almost certainly have a like a rough diamond in your hand that with the right
Yeah.
effort and the right team behind it can really shine.
And it's my understanding that even if, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Simon, but even if TinyKiwi was not profitable, it could still be valuable for you for what you wanted to achieve, right? That wouldn't be a deal breaker, or would it?
No, it wouldn't. And actually, this was a thing that we had. Yossi was using a paddle to manage his subscriptions at the time, and we had to move them all to Stripe. And when you ask paying users to kind of, you try to make it as easy for them as possible, but when you're asking them to kind of cancel and resubscribe, there's the
Yeah.
chance of losing some in the way. And that was just a bet that I had to take in order to get them moved. But it was exactly with that thinking behind it. Even if 50% of all these users leave, which fortunately they didn't. Actually, we have increased the user base by 50%. So MRR is 50% up since we took over
because
the
of
tool.
the change.
Yeah,
No.
because of the change and us trying to market it and market it through our channels and mentioning it in newsletters and so on and so on. So it went good. But even if we had lost 50% or something like that of all the subscribers, it would still be worth it because we would finally
Right.
have a tool we could integrate into Feedhive. And I think we have had so good feedback from our Feedhive users. They love TinyKiwi. They love how it integrates. We recently made a new video ad
Yes,
where we
it's
use
valid.
this TinyKiwi and this kind of design. We don't say TinyKiwi, we say that Feedhive's design tool. And this video ad is one of the best performing ones we've had so far. It seems like people are really down the street of something that can make their visuals look nice really fast. And we're converting new Feedhive users a lot just based on this new value proposition. So
Hmm.
one thing is that we actually managed to increase the user base of TinyKiwi, but add to that the Feedhive users we have welcomed to our platform in the last month, with the primary angle being that Feedhive is also able to do this design. They have these design
Right.
capabilities inbuilt to the tool. So for us, it was still a super good decision, even if we would lose some of the subscribers in this transfer.
And how do you see this market, like the indie market of selling and buying this side project? How do you see it changing in the next years?
I first of all think it's absolutely incredible. I'm so psyched about it. The fact that we can now do acquisitions like this, and it's not something that's exclusive to huge companies. And I see that there's kind of like an evolution going on, because going back 10 or 15 years, starting your own business was just not something that everyone can do. It was incredibly difficult. There's like a ton of things that you like, a huge barrier you had to kind of cross in order to actually become an entrepreneur and start your own business. That became increasingly more easy. Outsourcing work like Upwork, Fiverr made it super easy to establish a team under
Right.
almost no there's almost no risk at your end besides the money that you need to put into it. But there's no salary agreements and insurance things you need to cover, and all of this. You can literally establish a team out of the blue and start working. So starting a company and starting an internet company became easier. Now I'm thinking we're moving into this next thing where small bootstrapped indie companies can start playing Monopoly like this, acquiring other small bootstrap tools. And this is not something you're not going to get on the front page of TechCrunch from acquiring a tool like TinyKiwi. But that's also not the point. it's an evolution that's pointing towards towards the right direction, where a minimized version of what really big players do is starting to happen in these small kind of indie communities, in these small circles, and I think that's incredibly exciting. This is not the last
Yeah.
time I'm going to buy a tool like this, for sure.
Everyone, now get ready for the DMs, Simon. Get ready for the DMs. And what also incredible, you actually never met each other in person, right?
No.
Or did you? So that's the beauty of the internet.
Yeah.
You know, like it's like we are now all connected virtually.
It's the power of building in public. I think building in public has a lot to do with it. Like we know the creators in this space, and there's like this community of people, even if not everyone really knows each other. Like being part of this community opens a lot of doors.
And I also do
Yeah.
think it really adds to the trust part. I firmly believe that when we're all somewhat public and we're all public about what we do, for sure, there was a point where Yossi invited me into the code base and I still hadn't made a bank transfer. There's no money on his bank account. If I wanted to, I could have taken the whole thing and run with it. And then try to do a lawsuit cross border, and especially in a closed country here like Switzerland, that's very, very difficult. And if I wanted to, I could have probably gotten away with that. And I think it adds to the trust part, that being so public about what I do, that I am. I would never risk my reputation from trying to fuck over a fellow indie hacker like that. That I think would make it, at least for me, if it was some completely random company I have never heard about before, I never see their existence, talking to me about acquiring, I would be more careful with what I share with them. That if it was some huge influencer or someone that's very public about what they do, where I know that they had their whole reputation at stake, I would be more keen to go into a more trust-based collaboration like we did here.
Couldn't agree more.
I think this was definitely a success case, and you both sound very happy with it. And I really appreciate also the fact that you agreed to speak here with the wannabe entrepreneurs, because it's not every day that we have both sides of a business, sitting next to each other and discussing the whole business and the whole process, and how the different perspectives that each one of you had. I surely learned a lot about this. It's also something that I don't know much about, like selling and buying companies and indie companies, something that I'm getting more into in these last days. But it's something new. And as you said, Simon, I'm excited as well about this new world and this little community, which is still very small. The indie community is still very small.
It is.
I think we all know the same names, right? If I put here a few names, Thibaut, Dagobert, Levels, whatever, like we all know them, which is incredible. I find it just really, really interesting.
For sure.
But it's growing, and maybe in a few years, this will be the new VC. This will be the way people make business. So thank you so much for both of you for being part of this community, and also really appreciate you coming here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the end of this conversation. I have learned a lot with both Simon and Joseph. And if there's one thing I would love for you to go home with, is that it's possible to sell your project, even if you are pre-seed, even if you are not bringing any MRR. If you build a good tool, a tool that is useful, that is solving a problem, maybe others can just acquire it for the software because they need it. It's great because it saves a lot of time for builders. As bootstrappers, and I know this with my PodSqueeze venture now, it's just me and João building our tool, and we really, really lack time and development time. So if I was able to acquire a company that already solved a big problem or a big feature that we want to implement, we would probably just spend the money to do so, because it would save us a lot of time. So maybe this is something for you to think about before you just drop your project, or if you're feeling tired and just want to build something else, why not trying to maybe share it on Twitter or share it in those micro acquire platforms and platforms that allow you to sell your SaaS. Maybe that's a possibility for you. Now, that's the end of today's episode. I'll be back next week. But if you want to support this Wannabe Entrepreneur podcast, and if you want me to continue to produce content for you and to produce more interviews, first of all, send me some feedback. Send me a message at WBTiago on Twitter. Give me any feedback, like who should I interview next? And besides that, if you really, really want to support, join our community of indie makers. It's on Slack, and you can basically meet people from all over the world, and Yosef is there and a lot of other members. So it costs $10 per month, and will be as well supporting this podcast. The links will be in the show notes of today's episode. This was another Wannabe Entrepreneur. See you next time.